Hello, everyone. My name is Oleg Kagan, and I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator with LA County Library, and I welcome you to Work Ready, in-depth tour of Google Slides. Before we get going to today's event, I'll take care of some housekeeping, do the land acknowledgement, and tell you a little bit about the Work Ready program. So if you can hear me and see the slide on the screen, then you're good to go. However, if you're having trouble hearing me or seeing the slide on the screen, do let me know in the chat and I'll do my best to assist. Before you do that, however, I recommend exiting the program and re-entering again because that often solves whatever problems are ailing Zoom at the moment. Now, if you would like to listen to this presentation on the phone, you can do that by calling 1-669-900-6833 and using the access code 895-2317-8522 and the passcode 123123. Now, you may have noticed that the mics and videos for attendees of the program have been disabled. That's so that everyone can focus on the presentation for today. That isn't to say that I don't welcome your questions. I absolutely do, and I have some time at the end for a Q&A, and whatever doesn't get covered in the Q&A, you should feel absolutely free to email me your questions, and my email address will be posted throughout the presentation. Now, if you do have questions, those should go in the Q&A box. That's the icon with the single speech bubble. It says Q&A. And then if I ask you questions or if you have comments throughout the presentation, suggestions or feedback, you can put that in the chat. That's the box with the two speech bubbles. All right. And now it is time for our land acknowledgement. The County of Los Angeles recognizes that we occupy land originally and still inhabited and cared for by the Tongva, Tataviam, Serrano, Kizh, and Chumash peoples. We honor and pay respect to their elders and descendants, past, present, and emerging, as they continue their stewardship of these lands and waters. We acknowledge that settler colonization resulted in land seizure, disease, subjugation, slavery, relocation, broken promises, genocide, and multi-generational trauma. This acknowledgement demonstrates our responsibility and commitment to truth, healing, and reconciliation, and to elevating the stories, culture, and community of the original inhabitants of Los Angeles County. We are grateful to have the opportunity to live and work on these ancestral lands. We are dedicated to growing and sustaining relationships with Native peoples and local tribal governments, including, in no particular order, the Fernandino Tataviam Band of Mission Indians, the Gabrielino Tongva Indians of California Tribal Council, the Gabrielino Tongva San Gabriel Band of Mission Indians, the Gabrielino Band of Mission Indians Kizh Nation, the San Manuel Band of Mission Indians, and San Fernando Band of Mission Indians. To learn more about the First Peoples of Los Angeles County, please visit the Los Angeles City County Native American Indian Commission website at lanic.lacounty.gov. All right. And now I'd like to tell you a little bit about the Work Ready program before we get started with today's event. Work Ready started in December of 2020 when the library started lending laptops and hotspots out of 20, at that time now 27 library locations, and presenting virtual events on a range of work-related topics to help people get a job, improve their work situation, and plan a more sustainable career path. To see well over 50 of our past events, you can head over to the Work and Career playlist on our YouTube channel. I'm going to post the link to that in the chat so you can peruse that, rewatch programs that you're interested in, and share any that you find interesting with folks in your life. Excuse me, the Work Ready program is made possible due to funds provided by the American Rescue Plan. And we also have an excellent program coming up for you next week, and that is Work Ready, Never Too Old to Get Rich. Startups aren't age-bound. Author and Yahoo columnist Carrie Hannon will share up-to-date resources and snappy profiles of successful older entrepreneurs to show you how to start a thriving business midlife. And that program is, of course, absolutely free, just like all of our programs. It's going to be next Tuesday, December 17th at 11 a.m., exactly a week from right this moment. And if you're interested in more library programs, you can go to our website at lacountylibrary.org. On the top right-hand side, you can click the events button. You can get all of our programs in person and virtual out of 85 library locations, programs for all ages, kids, teens, adults, and older adults, all absolutely free and for you. And if you're just interested in virtual programs, you can hover over that events link and you'll get a little drop down that says virtual programming. Click on that, you can just get Zoom events like this one. All right. Now that we're through with that, it's time to get going with today's program, and that is, of course, Work Ready in-depth tour of Google Slides. We had our first question in the Q&A. Will a link be sent to us to view this program later? And it will. This program is being recorded, so if you miss any part of it, don't worry. It'll be on YouTube later this week, and you'll get a link via a follow-up email. So you'll be able to review the program, share it with anybody you know who would be interested but has missed it. I'm going to stop sharing and change over to my slides, which have been created this time in Google Slides. Sometimes I use Microsoft PowerPoint, but not today. Today is a Google Slide day, and for good reason. Google Slides are an excellent way to view presentations. I'm going to hide the bookmark bar to avoid distraction. And here we are. Oh, somebody asked in the chat, can we save the chat? So you can't save the chat, but anything that's posted in the chat, I will also send you in the follow-up email. So don't worry if you miss any of the links in the chat. Okay, let's get going with today's event, Work Ready in-depth tour of Google Slides. What I'd like to start with, though, before I get deep into the presentation, which will last about an hour and 15 minutes today, so you should be out of here by 12:15, is what experience do you have with Google Slides? Have you, one, used it before, but would like to learn a little bit more? Are you a complete beginner, or are you an expert looking to see what's new in Google Slides that you could potentially use? Let me know in the chat. And while I have a set presentation, I can always adjust my presentation in order to figure out how best to serve you out there. Because who is this program for? It's not for me. It's, of course, for you. So I'm getting a lot of response that say complete beginner, a teacher who uses slides and want more intricate knowledge. So we're getting a lot of beginners. A few people have used PowerPoint before, that which is the most common presentation software. We've got a lot of beginners. All right. And I will tell you that I've done this presentation before, and the previous presentation, I went through every one of these menus. And so I'm going to send you a link in the follow-up email to that presentation, because today I'm not going to have enough time to go through every file menu. This is going to be a little bit more of a high-level presentation, not in terms of complication, but in terms of ideas. I'm not going to go through every feature of Google Slides today, but because I've done a previous presentation on it, you can benefit from that one and watch if you want something that's very, very in-depth, very kind of just if you've never used Google Slides before and you don't know anything about it, that presentation will be helpful for you. But it looks like some of our folks here have used Google Slides before, so I think we'll be able to provide something for everyone. Maybe not if you're an expert user, because then you might be a better Google Slides user than I am. And then you can teach me about Google Slides features, which is absolutely all right. We're all here to learn. So the contents of today's program are going to be an introduction. So we're going to talk about presentation software. We're going to talk about a tiny bit who I am. Then we're going to move on to the orientation, which is we're going to orient to this screen. And so as you can see, I have not started the slideshow of this presentation, which would look like this, because I want to show you what the entire screen looks like. And so we are going to do an orientation where I'm going to remove the slideshow here and we're going to go through different parts of the screen. Then we're going to cover features of probably commonly used features, features that you might want to know about for Google Slides. Not going to be all the features because there's quite a few. And then I'm going to share some best practices with regards to presenting using presentation software like Google Slides, but also presentation software like Canva and PowerPoint. These presentation best practices will serve you well, no matter which audience you're speaking to. And that's why I didn't want to just cover the intricacies of the software today, but also how to use the software. And then we're going to end with a Q&A. I'm going to try to talk reasonably fast so we have enough time so that I can actually cover a lot of your questions. And of course, as I mentioned before, if you don't get your question answered, you can always email me, and my email address is at the top of the slide here, and it'll be also on a slide at the end. Okay. So let's move forward with who I am. My name is Ole Kagan. Of course, I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator with LA County Library. If you've been watching our Work Ready programs and some other library programs, you've probably seen me before. I've been a librarian for 14 years, all with LA County. I've also interned at other libraries and occasionally I've worked at other organizations, but for the last 14 years, it's been LA County. I've worked at 3 different library branches, and now I'm overseeing community engagement for the whole system. Uh, I can talk about the rest of these things too, but you can read the slides in the future. What I will say is that I love teaching about computers. I love teaching about digital literacy. What I'm doing right now is something that I'm truly passionate about. I've been doing it longer than I've been a librarian because this is something that we all could use. This is something that's interesting. So for me, it's interesting to come up with the class to think about how best to shape the information that you'll be receiving so that when we finish, you can get started with Google Slides if you want to, and then you'll know if it's something that you're going to be using. So moving forward to uses of Google Slides. And now we're still in the introduction, but we're transitioning slightly over to the orientation. So the question is, what is Google Slides? Google Slides is, of course, presentation software. It's used to deliver presentations just like this one, but it's not just presentation software. So it's not purely slides. You know, it used to be overhead transparencies or a, what do they call them, projector with those, I don't know what they're called, the little slides. Now it's, of course, all on the computer, and we've got Google Slides. So you can do public presentations like that. That's a typical use of presentation software, but you can also create memo style documents, which means uh, that if you want to structure a document in a way that's sometimes a little bit easier to understand or easier to conceptualize and use images and diagrams and things, it's sometimes easier to use presentation software to create that document rather than, say, a word processing software like Microsoft Word or Google Docs, which goes, you know, kind of in a more page by page format, and images and diagrams are a little bit more challenging to include in there. You can create a presentation in Google Slides, and you can export it as a PDF or just share the Google Slides file, and somebody else will be able to go through the slides on their own without your presentation, but they'll still be able to get the information in a way that is sometimes easier to receive depending on what the information is. And then the final use is brainstorming. Now, this is not something that many people know about or think about with Google Slides, but I will occasionally use Google Slides this way. For instance, even if I'm not doing a presentation with slides, I'll sometimes structure a presentation in Google Slides and just to get the ideas out of my head. And we all think differently. Some people like to draw mind maps, some people just like to write outlines. I find the visual format of Google Slides and other presentation software to be very helpful in my own creativity and brainstorming because sometimes you want to just have text, but sometimes you also want to have images around. And Google Slides and other presentation software has enough variety of features and has enough flexibility that you can brainstorm in many ways besides just text or just images. Somebody mentioned in the chat that teachers use presentation software to send work to kids. The kids can upload and send it back to submit work. Yes, indeed. So there's a variety of uses for Google Slides, and that's partially why we're covering it today. Another reason we're covering Google Slides today in particular, and that I've done programs on Google Workspace apps like Google Sheets and Google Docs, is because they're free to use. All you need is to have a Google account, and you can use this software, and they have a lot of features. And this is as compared to the prevailing popular Office software, which is Microsoft Office, which has Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, and Excel, of course, but those cost money and are more difficult for many people to access. So moving forward, speaking of the competition. So Microsoft PowerPoint is the default and the standard for presentation software and has been for many years. As you can see, Microsoft PowerPoint was born in 1987. So it's almost as old as I am. Microsoft PowerPoint is a millennial. And it is great software. It has a ton of features, most of which most people don't use, but they exist and some people use them. So for power users, Microsoft PowerPoint is wonderful. Most recently, Canva, which is totally online software. So you only use it in your browser on the web, nothing to download, has come into play. It's been around for just over 10 years, and Canva is really nice presentation software because they give you a lot of tips and features to make your presentations look stylish and professional. Whereas in Microsoft PowerPoint, it's really easy to make presentations that are plain and unattractive, especially if you're a non-designer like me. You have to work very hard to make your presentations look good. Canva does a lot of that for you. And so people who are not designers can use Canva and make presentations that look pristine. Google Slides was born in 2006. It wasn't originally, it was originally came from a different company that was then absorbed into Google and brought into the Google Workspace, which some people call Google Drive now. And it has developed over the years to where it is now, which is, I would say, somewhere in the middle in terms of features of Microsoft PowerPoint. Not as many as PowerPoint, more than Canva. And it has the features that the majority of people would need in using presentation software. So I think this is now we're done with the introduction. And now I want to get into the orientation portion of our program. We're going to be going through 3 different elements of orienting us to Google Slides. Am I talking too fast? Let me know in the chat if you're following me so far and if you're ready for us to get into the orientation or if you have any quick questions that I can cover before we start. I know that somebody had asked in the Q&A if Google Slides is an app to download. That is, how do you load it on a laptop? So Google Slides is not an app to download. It's completely web-based. You use it in your browser. It's basically a website that you go to. All right, good. Because it looks like we're going well here. So let's get into this orientation. If you're ready, I'm ready. I'm going to exit my slideshow because actually I'm going to be showing you a lot of things rather than just using slides. So this is the most useful way to do this is via demonstration. So let me exit this here. I'm going to exit slideshow, and here we are. back into orientation. So Google Slides, as I mentioned before, is part of Google Drive. Google Drive has several different apps, and it starts if you go to drive.google.com. And then when you click on that, if you have a Google account, it takes you here. Here you see the different files that you have. And this right here, this yellow one, is a Google Slides icon. And then we have Google Docs and Google Sheets. I've used this account for presentations before, so you can see I've created some dummy documents. So when you create a new file, you can create a new Google Slides document, and all of the files that you create in Drive end up right here. And again, this is not something that you download. This is all on the web or in the cloud, as they say. It lives on Google's servers. And in order to have this, you need to get a free Google account. You can do that at google.com. So that's the basics of Google Drive. Of course, there are different, you can do different move files around. You can have folders. So I have a couple of folders here that I've created. You can look at all your files. You can see who created them. And you can also have files shared with you. And that's one of the benefits of Google Drive is that it makes it very easy to collaborate with others worth working on files. Now, with this account, I haven't collaborated with anybody, but if I wanted to share my files with somebody else who has Google Drive, I can, and we can work together on documents. All right, so that's the basics of Google Drive. Again, I have another presentation on YouTube currently where I go much more in depth into Google Drive, but in order to save a little time and get it more into slides features, let's move on to file menus. So I'm going to cover view and insert, which are the menus that you will use most frequently when you're creating slides. And so the basics here would be, so if you have a new presentation, so this is obviously a presentation that I've already created, but if you have a new presentation, you'll have a blank presentation. Um, you have a few options here with regards to how you see the screen, which is what view really creates. So there's different modes here. You can do editing mode. That's where we are now, where we're actually working on the presentation. We have commenting mode, which is if you're sharing the document with somebody and want feedback, they can be in commenting mode so they can add comments to the presentation. So if you fix them or anything, or just view. So if you're sharing a presentation with somebody who just needs to look at it, if you're basically, like I mentioned before, like a memo style document, if you want to share your presentation for somebody to see, you can share it with them in viewing mode, or we can just use viewing mode here. So here, as you can see, all of my editing features went away, and we're just viewing the presentation. All right. And I'm going to switch my mode back to editing. And you see everything here appeared. Speaker notes down here appeared. There currently aren't any speaker notes, which is okay. If I want to just do slideshow, remove my whole browser and just put the slide full screen, I can go to slideshow or hit Control F5. There's many ways to get into everything in the Google document. So I can do a slideshow by clicking here. I can go here to slideshow, or I can hold Control and press F5 on my keyboard. Motion is something we're going to talk about a little bit later. That's for slide transitions, and also for making your images or objects do various movements. I don't recommend using it very often, but I do want to let you know about it. If you want to build your own theme, you can do that. So this gets a little bit more advanced into Google Slides. So as you can see, you can change any way that your slide layout looks. Now this looks like a lot of different things here. The slide actually makes it easier to see. So I'm going to be talking about information hierarchy a little bit later, but you can see here, first level, second level, third level, fourth level. You can change how each of these levels look in terms of font size, font style, font size, bold, etc. You can change what the title of the site looks like, and there's different layouts 4 slides that you can choose from. And also I'm going to cover that also as well. But this is in this place, if you go to Theme Builder, you can actually create your own, which if you're a designer or really like to fiddle with things, I recommend. Otherwise, I don't recommend doing it. It's too complicated. There's no actual need to spend time on it. I talked about comments before. When you're in commenting mode, people can comment, or if you're sharing, people can comment in your presentation, but only if you're sharing with people. If you're just using it by yourself, you're not going to see any random people commenting. Grid view allows you to adjust your presentation. So if you want to see all of your slides at a glance, you can go to grid view and you can change the order of your slides. I like to, when I'm practicing my presentation, I like to look at it in grid view so that I know what's coming up next, and I can see where to go and work on my transitions between slides, which is to say that my spoken transitions between slides. Ruler is this ruler right here and on the side here, and this is useful for when you're moving images around and moving other objects around to see where they are in the slide. You can remove that if you're not interested in seeing that. If it's just clutter for you, you can remove that. And a lot of these parts here, guides and Snap 2, are for when you're designing the presentation. So guides are lines that you can put onto your slides so that if you want to line up all your images or other objects in the same place, you can use guides to do that. So we can, for instance, add vertical guide. So you can see we've created this line right here, and I can move this line around. And so when you do the slideshow, that line's not going to appear. That's just for when you're creating the presentation. And so if you want to create all your slides to look the same, you can use those guides to know where to put, for instance, if I wanted my header to be my title header to always be here, I can put my guide here, and that way I know that it'll always line up. Let's remove that guide. Okay, let's get back here. Looks like I went back to the view. Oh, let's remove the guide. So view, guides, don't show guides. Let's go back to this. There it goes. Program contents there and orientation. My browser temporarily got stuck. Okay, snap to. So you can snap to means that when you're dragging objects around, they can automatically kind of quickly snap to whatever they and get close to whatever the item is. So if I want to, so if we have a grid, so oh, different kind of grid. So grid would be more like, so there's an invisible grid within the slide. And so I can do, let me see if I can show you this really quick, how this might work. So these are all images, these little folders. And we'll talk about objects in a bit. So if I want to snap to, currently it's set to snap to guides. I don't have any guides showing. Guides do appear automatically if you're dragging around. So you can see these little lines appear. So this is helpful. If I want all of these folders to line up, it'll actually do it for me. As I move this image around, different guides appear to make it easier for me to line things up. I don't have to use them, but I really like them because I can't even cut straight. So for me, any kind of guide to make things appear to line up is very helpful. But we can also have it snap to grid. So if I snap to grid, then that it'll snap to whatever the invisible grid there is. So it's actually currently not it is doing it a little bit because the grid is so small that it is technically snapping to grid. But I actually want to snap to guide. I want to go back to snap to guides. The grid is it's too small for me to really be able to use it properly. But if you are dragging it, you kind of feel it stopping at various points. So I want to get back to the guide to make it this line up again. There we go. Now the spacing is all neat. One more time there. All right. So that's snap to. Live pointers is primarily for when you're collaborating with people. You can have different people's mice, also different people's cursors all around. So if somebody wants to, who's on a call with you or something, they're using it, that you'll be able to see their mouse moving. Speaker notes are down here. You can show speaker notes, show film strip. Film strip is this thing on the side where you can see all the different sides. It's like a grid, but it's over on the side so I can move easily between slides. Let's go back to orientation. And then of course, zoom. I can zoom in. I can zoom out. When you're designing your slides, sometimes you want to zoom in, zoom out so you can have more control where you're moving. You can get a little bit more detailed. And finally, I can make my browser full screen. I'm not going to do it right now, but if you want to avoid all distractions, then you can avoid all distractions by making it full screen. Insert is exactly what it sounds like. You can insert all sorts of things into your presentation, all sorts of objects. So obviously you can insert text. So you can insert text boxes into your presentation. And there's a box right here. You can insert a text box. I'm going to create a new slide so I can just demonstrate a few of these things for you. So I just right clicked here. I can click here, new slide. So by default, it gave me this blank slide with layout. I can also change the different kind of layout for the slide. So I go over to the slide menu, go to apply layout, and I have these various layouts. So if I want, depending on the information that I want to present, I can use any of these. I'm going to just do a blank one, totally blank. And you can create layouts with each slide as you go, or you can use preset layouts. So I'm using a template here. So it comes with a bunch of layouts, which I find helpful because I'm not in it to design a whole new templates. I'm in it to present information to you. All right. So if I want to insert items, the most basic item that you're inserting in slides is text boxes. This is a text box. I clicked here, I dragged this box open, and here is some text. By default, within this template, it gives me very, very small font. I don't recommend using size 8 font in presentations, and I don't actually know why Google decided to use that size within a template, because as you may already be able to, you can't even see this on some screens. I'm going to make it bigger. I recommend using no smaller than 14 size font, but even some people would say that's too small. So most often 18 or 23 are good size fonts for just text on a slide. That also prevents you from putting too much text on a slide. So we just inserted some text. We can also insert shapes. We have a variety of options. I'm going to insert an arrow so we know where the text is. We can insert a table. So if you want a grid, as you can put information into, you can do that. You can insert a chart. So you can create an original chart here, or you can insert a chart from Google Sheets, which is a neat integration feature, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a bit. You can insert various types of lines and connectors. I like the scribble. It's not very useful, but it's kind of fun to do. Delete that. And then you can insert audio and video. I skipped over word art because I don't recommend using it. It's not very stylish and it's rarely comes in handy. I can kind of show you what it does, but I don't actually recommend using it. So this is word art. This word art is a copy of a feature that Microsoft PowerPoint has and Microsoft Word has. Um, so here is it created a little thing for you. You can double click on it. You can do different things with word art. You can make it look different. So different types of, I don't know if different types of lines, but you can basically style this bit of word art in different ways, but it tends not to come out very well and looks different from the rest of your presentation. And so I don't recommend using it, but if you can experiment with it if you like. I want to show you audio and video. These are nice to do. If you're making a presentation, you want to show a YouTube video. I happen to want to show you a YouTube video, but not all of right now. I just want you to have it in the presentation. And so what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to remove these. I'm going to insert. I'm going to change the layout of my slide just a little bit. Apply that. All I want is really just a title, maybe a title and a little bit of text. There. Let's see. More in-depth tour. So you see within this layout, the font is the same as the font that's used in the rest of the presentation. Maybe this slide layout is a little bigger. Here I'm going to put a link a little bit later, but I want to insert a video, and I want to insert a video of the previous presentation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert video, and it's going to come up with this little box. So I can search YouTube. So I can insert a video directly from YouTube, and it's going to just plop right in there. So what I want to do is I want to search for work ready, in-depth tour of, my typing is not great this morning, Google Slides. Click on that, press enter, and there it is. This is the presentation that I've done before. So as you can see, I've done other in-depth tours and many other work-ready programs, as have other people, but this is the one I'm looking for. So this one was 2 hours long. I'm going to double click on that. I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to click insert. There it is. So now the video is here. Oh, it's playing. It's playing. I don't need to play. I can have it set in there's for different format options. I can have it play on click. So it's when I'm running the slideshow, I have to click in order to play it, or I can have it, the video will come on automatically when I change to this slide, or I can play it manually by also clicking the play button. And then I can start in different places of the video. Mute audio, I don't need to do it, or I can change the size, that'll drop shadow to it. These options are standard for most objects within Google Slides. All right, I want to make this bigger. Somebody asked in the chat about inserting JPEG photos. JPEG is a type of image file. And in order to insert JPEG photos, it's exactly the same as I just inserted this image, this video. Go to insert, and there should be actually with JPEGs, you can just copy and paste them. That's tends to be what I do. There is an insert image somewhere. It's right here. Insert image. You can get it from your computer. You can search the web. I tend to just copy and paste images into my presentation, but there's various ways where you can insert images, and JPEG is one of the types of files. PNG, JPEGs are all files that you can insert. What I want to do here is I want to quickly search YouTube for the URL of this presentation, the web address of the presentation. In-depth tour of Google Slides. Here I am, and I want to copy that, share, and put this here. There we go. That way we can look at this later, and I'll share this as a PDF, and you will be able to access this later. Put this in the middle, use the guide to get it right in the middle, and use the guide to get this right in the middle as well. There we go. Slide created. Okay. So that's insert. You can also insert comments you can insert comments into your own presentation, or if you're helping somebody else with their presentation, create a comment, insert new slide, templates, which we're going to cover in just a moment. And if you want to have slide numbers, this is actually not a bad thing to do. I don't usually do it, but it's actually kind of nice. So you can see it automatically inserts slide numbers here. You can not include slide numbers on the first slide, but for me, the first slide is slide number 1. The nice thing about slide numbers is if you're sending this as a memo, it's one thing. Another nice reason to have slide numbers is so people know where you are in the presentation. So you can say, for instance, that there are 12 slides in the presentation, and they'll know that, oh, we're on slide 5 now. So they can think, okay, we have this much information left. All right, so that's view and insert. So this is getting us oriented, getting us started into slide design, which is the main thing. So what we have with presentation software, we have information that we need to present to an audience. And then we have the way we're going to present that information. Slide design is the way we're going to present that information. Let's start with the very, very basics. Slide background. So you can change the background on each of your slides individually by right-clicking, going to change background. You can insert an image with the background, or you can change the color. I recommend not having images for one reason. The reason is images are really distracting and make it hard to see the text in front of them. So let me do it. I like elephants. I'm going to search Google for elephants, and let's do this one here. It's just the first one that comes up. As you can see, I've added a background of elephants. My text is a little bit harder to read. This graphic doesn't come through very well. This one actually turned out okay because it's just a single color here, and so we can see some of this text. But it's not, you have to use images judiciously. I recommend mostly using patterns in a background, not patterns that are too bold, um, or just standard colors. So we had, I think this gray before, or something. It was a lighter gray. It was that one. Done. So with this lighter gray, not a very exciting background, but one where I can actually see, and well, me and you can see what's on the slide. You can also change the background for all the slides simultaneously, which I believe I did not do just yet. So some of these slides have this grid here, and that's part of the template. So you can change backgrounds as you will. I recommend not spending too much time on backgrounds. Maybe have a different one background for your title slide and then have basically the same background for all the other slides. If you don't have a great reason to have all kinds of different backgrounds within your slides, don't do it. And that follows with the best practice of simplicity, which I'll talk about later. Now, one nice new feature of Google Slides that Canva and PowerPoint have had is templates. Most of us aren't designers. I'm not a designer. I don't want to spend my time designing presentations. Uh, our library has a presentation format, which I use very often for PowerPoint presentations. I'm not using it today because I want to show you the templates in Google Slides. Templates are basically slide designs that you can use for your own presentations that are professional looking and fit with whatever you're doing. Let me show you some templates. We're going to slides and we're going to go to templates. So it's a new feature, and Google adds new features fairly frequently to its software. So we're going to go to templates, and as you can see on the side here, and most menus appear on the side here, there's a variety of different types of templates. Now it says investor pitch, workshop facilitation, strategy plan. These are just sample ideas of what you can use those presentations for. So like if you're an artist and you want to have a portfolio, you can use this one. I clicked on it so you can see what it looks like. And there's different fonts, there's different layouts. It looks nice. I didn't feel like that was the right one for my presentation. Now, these are all sample designs. So what you would do is you would change the images, you can change the text to the what would work for your presentation. These are pretty complicated templates. They're not simple. They're not that plain. They're designed. And for some people, that's a good thing. And for some people, it's just too much. And so if it's too much, you can also just create a blank new presentation, put an orange background or something, and create a simple, just simple hierarchy for yourself of font sizes and just use that. But if you want something a little bit more fancy, then using these templates is not bad. One of the nice things about the templates is that they also provide you with graphic materials that you can use for the rest of the slides. So as you can see, I use these little dots or these little circles for this slide here. I just copy and pasted them and I changed a couple of colors here. I use these folders as a design kind of element here. And some of these slides were included by default in this template. Some of them I created on my own using kind of the design vocabulary of what this template had. Then we've got, so templates are a nice way to play around. It's also a good way to learn the features and kind of learn how to get more advanced at Google Slides. You just create a new presentation, choose a template, and then mess around with that template. That's something that you want to do when you don't have a looming presentation. It's something that you want to do when you have a little bit of time. Set aside 30 minutes or an hour just to choose a template and move it around. Create a template on something that you're interested in. So I've been reading a lot about humanistic psychology lately. So I would create a presentation on humanistic psychology using a template if I just wanted to practice, but also learn about something that I'm interested in. Next, I alluded to text and objects before. So what do we have in creating presentations in Google Slides? We have a background, slide itself, background, and then everything within it is either text or an object. By object, I mean an image, like this compass. When I click on this image, I get a little box. These squares allow me to resize it. I can change the coloration of it. As soon as I click on an object, the menu here changes. So some of them are pretty similar. I can change the border color, border weight. I can change the border style. I can make this image into a link. I can add a comment to this image. I can crop this image. This is specific. Once you get past around this line here, they get more specific to whatever object is chosen. So I can crop this image. I can reset it or I can replace it. And then these dots are very important. These are the items that are hidden. So if I wanted more format options, and now this is a standard feature here in Google Slides, and this comes with pretty much every object, text and images. There's different things I can do. I can change the size or rotation. I want to rotate my image, I can do that here. I can change the size of the image either by dragging it using my mouse, or if I want to be more exact, I can increase the size by adjusting the height here. And it was 0.81 before, because it was a square before. Or I can use percentages here. I can change the position of where it is on the screen. Again, I can drag it, or if I want to be more exact, I can use this here. I can change the colors. The colors, actually, this isn't a whole very useful. I guess I just made it negative, but I don't use that. I don't use this option very much, but it is possible to, if your images work with these kind of coloration options, then you can do that. Other kind of adjustments, so I can make my image see-through if I want to. By increasing opacity, I can increase how bright it is, the contrast. I can add a drop shadow. I'm a big fan of drop shadows, to be honest. This presentation is mostly flat, so there aren't a lot of drop shadows. Drop shadows aren't part of the vocabulary of this design. But I am a fan of generally including drop shadows with images because it creates a little bit of a more luxuriant feel to the presentation. It creates a little bit of the images pop out a little bit more when there's a drop shadow. So I did use a drop shadow for a few of the images somewhere here around in the presentation, but not here. So this is also an image. As you can see, I have a variety of images here. So then let me show you the rest of the drop shadow, or you can create a reflection. So you can see the reflection appeared. Not honestly a very useful feature. I don't use reflections very often, but you can change the type of reflection it is. But it's possible. And of course, everything depends on your vision of what you want your slides to be. Text is also an object, and it's used slightly differently than images. So every text box can be adjusted. So you can actually have borders around the text boxes. You can have the text box be filled. There's no fill currently in this text box. It's blank. So if I go to fill color, it's currently transparent, but if I want it to be green, I can do that. You can see that this image is above this text box, and all of the objects within a slide are ordered. So that means that there is within the software of Google Slides, it keeps track of the order of every single object on that slide, which means that if I want to move things around each other, I need to know what order they're in. So I can see the one on the very top is this compass. Usually the order is by which one is pasted at, like which one is added last. That's the one at the top. So this compass was the last thing I put on the slide, so it's on top. This header is above that. Then this white box is above that. And then, well, these are above the white box. This is above this box. So we can arrange that order in order to create effects for our presentation. So if I wanted this compass to be in the back for some reason, you wouldn't be able to see it, but I can right click on it and I can adjust the order. I can bring to front, I can bring forward. So bring to front brings it all the way to the top. Bring forward just brings it above where it is currently in the order. Send backward, same thing, it sends it back down, and send to the back sends it all the way to the back. So as you can see, the compass is there, but you can't see it. Now it's totally gone. If I want to bring it back, I need to find it again. I know it's back there. Here it is. And then I'm going to bring to the front order, bring to front, and then I can put this text box underneath it, and there it is again. So now we were talking about, getting into, before we were looking at the big picture, now we're getting into nitty-gritty details of how to create presentations. I don't like this green. This green is not part of my design vocabulary in this presentation. I'm going to make it transparent again. All right, so that's some ways of working with text objects. You can do many things, even though the amount of format options are limited. When you configure these things in different ways, you can make your slides appear in a plethora of ways. So you have a lot of control over how your objects appear, whether they're text or images. All right, moving forward to creating presentations. So we talked about this template. If I wanted to create a new presentation, this is what it would look like. It's blank. I got one slide. It's white. Title, the default font is Arial. The subheading is everything is Arial. If I wanted to create a new slide, pretty much the same. There's a default layout, and if we go to slide and look at other layout, so I have some default layouts. So if you're a minimalist and want, almost the absence of design within your slides, this is what you would do. Then I would create a bullet point here. And there we go. You can throw in some images. Insert image. I'm going to insert image from the web. I'm just going to search minimalism and see what comes up. Great. I love that image. Oh, it looks, some images aren't available to use because their rights they're not free to use. So be careful about that. I usually go to websites like pexels.com and get free stock images. But for now, I'm not going to do that because I just want to keep it simple. Let's use these plans. Let's see if that works. Okay, there we go. This is kind of the most basic slide configuration. Let's add I want to create format options. I want to add a drop shadow. This is the most basic kind of slide configuration that you can have. This is kind of my go-to. There we go. Title, bullet points, image, done. As soon as you have this, you're able to present. If you want more, then you have the options of using different layouts, using different themes, using different templates. So I think we're there within slide design. And now let's go through to our next slide here, which is, so this is, we did slide design, backgrounds, template layouts, text objects, getting started with a presentation. And then one thing I do want to mention here, I have what to include here, and I'll go through that in a moment. That's gets us to best practices. Before we'll go through useful features as well, but infographics. So when you think about your audience, there are many ways to present information. So I could have presented backgrounds, getting started, templates, layouts, all in their own slide, and then had a screenshot of what changing each of those looks like, etc. I could have created a graph, for instance, of how often these features are used. There's many ways to show information. Many people just default to text, like, the presentation I showed you a second ago, 3 bullet points and an image. But to really, really get the best out of presentation software, use charts, use diagrams, use useful images as much as you can, because you're using a visual medium here. You are already talking and presenting information verbally. The text is meant to highlight the main points that you're saying, but people are looking at your slide and they want the information presented in a different way that adds to what you're saying. And you're able to do that with presentation software. So I recommend taking advantage of that. Now, ending our slide design section, I'd like to talk about what to include on the slide, what to include in presentations. You always want to include a title that describes the presentation, of course. Many people forget to do name and contact info. This is something that, some people have on their first slide. I tend to think it's a good idea to have on your last slide as well. It's what the last thing people will see if they want to contact you, who you are, how to contact you. You want to include table of contents. People want to know what you're going to be covering. So I like to keep this. Some people create a whole outline. I like to keep this simple because I'm going to tell you what I'm going to be covering. So it's always good to have a slide like this. If you can also include amount of time it's going to take, not bad as well. And then progress bar. So I've seen presentations that have this. So an example of this would be, kind of where we are in the presentation, slide number 8. Some people have a little bar where they move through and so people can see where they are. Good to have. It's just thinking about your audience. All right, useful features. So we've talked about working with objects already. I just want to highlight that this box comes up most often when you click these 3 dots and click Format Options. That's when you get that. In Microsoft PowerPoint, I think you double click on the object and you get the little box on the side. But when you work with objects in Google Slides, you can go to this and Format Options. You could also go to Format Options through Format Options. Moving between slides. I mentioned earlier that we want to avoid making things flashy. We want to keep things simple, but here's a pixelated version of the transitions image. There are several ways you can make things move on your slides. You can make transitions between slides. So if I wanted to transition from, let's say, this slide to this slide, but not just a simple, switch over. So right now, this is what it does. I click a space bar or an arrow, and it just switches over. There's no real transition. It just goes from one to the other. But we can make it a little bit fancier. We're going to right click and we're going to go to transition. So I right clicked on the slide and I can choose. And so you get this little icon here, as you can see. I can choose a slide transition. There's various options. Dissolve, fade, slide from right to left. Let's do this is a fancy one. Let's do cube. I don't want to apply to all slides. Let's see how it looks. Oh, there it goes. See, I went from one slide to the other. That's a lot of movement. I find those things kind of distracting. So if you're going to do something like that, make it fast, and make it make sense. Why are you doing it like that? Why are you creating that kind of transition? Slide from right and left are pretty simple transitions. There we go. You know, it's not bad. You make it move a little bit slower. Stop it, and then I can adjust how fast it goes. There. So that the way that looks in the bigger picture is similar. Slideshow. Oh, it created that image. Oh, there it goes. So when I move to this one, it'll just slide over. You can also make objects move. So this object, as you mentioned, it appeared as you saw when we went to the slideshow. So I went from this slide to slid over to this slide. And the next action is I press the spacebar and this image appears. You can make images appear in different ways also. So you can make it fly out, fly in, zoom out. So like we can fly in from the bottom and it'll look like that. So the slide appear, we move to the slide. And then the next action will be it flies in from the bottom. Sometimes this is useful to do to emphasize points. And if it works within your spoken presentation, these things can be helpful. Most of the time, I avoid using them. They're distracting. They don't actually help the presentation. But it depends on, again, it's your design. I just say don't do it too often. A neat feature within Google Drive is that the various Google apps integrate with each other. So if you put a chart within your presentation, you can create a Google Sheets file with a spreadsheet with a chart. You can insert it in to Google Slides, and then you can change it back in the Sheets file, and it'll update in the slides. So you can create various features from other presentations, from other files, and have them all integrate in one presentation. That way, if, for instance, you're sharing you have a team and you're sharing these slides with your team, each of you is working on a different Sheets file or a Word doc or a Google Doc. You can have all of your work automatically flow into this Google slide. So you can work on things independently and see everything. So that's a way to create dashboards in a way within Google Slides, since it gives you a little bit more style features. But I wanted to highlight integrations because this is something that's unique to Google Drive. It doesn't work if you're trying to go from Microsoft Word to Google Docs. It works only within the Google Drive kind of ecosystem. Okay, let's quickly cover some best practices and then I'm going to answer your questions. Okay, I'm going to make this slide. This is big. Best practices. I've been repeating a lot of these things and it's for a reason, because it's important that we know, for instance, to go easy on fonts and text decorations. When you have underlines and bold and italics all in the same place, it's very distracting to the eyes. People think I would be especially judicious about using underlines, because when you use underlines on the computer, people think they're links and they're going to try to click them. And they're going to be annoyed that they're not links, because that's what an underline usually means, especially on the web. You want to think about your audience in every bit of your design. So if you know that people are going to be accessing the presentation on the phone, you want to make sure the fonts are bigger. You want to make sure there's not too much information squeezed into a font. If you're using infographics, you want to make sure those infographics are labeled properly, that your audience will be able to understand the infographics and take away what you want them to take away. You want to respect information hierarchy. Just like within an outline, the important things are bigger, other things are a little smaller. You've got different header sizes. That's what you can see within the slide here. You can see best practices is the header, it's the title, do's and don'ts a little bit bigger, and then the other bullet points are smaller. I don't recommend having more than 2 or 3 font sizes in your presentation. So you have your title size, you have an intermediary size, like where it says do's and don'ts, which is, I think in this case, like 24. And then you can have the next one, which I think for me is 14 or 18 here. If you start doing more, again, it gets visually cluttered and confusing. Again, similarly, you don't want to use more than 2 fonts in the presentation. Once you start getting all kinds of fonts, then it becomes a display of fonts, and everybody's like, why is this all, everything looks different. It doesn't look cohesive. You use 2 fonts, it looks cohesive. People focus on your information. In terms of presenting, you want to focus on the transitions. Many people have an issue in their presentation where they go from slide to slide. They basically finish with a slide, stop talking, move on to the next slide, start talking again. And then that the whole presentation goes that way. It's just a bunch of fits and starts. And the energy of the presentation keeps falling down. You always want to focus on moving from what's on the slide before, what's on the next slide, and how are you transitioning to that slide. And that should be what you're doing when you're practicing your presentation. Some people rely too much on presentation software and not enough on the actual spoken words. The presentation software is meant to help you. It's not meant to be the presentation. You are the presentation. The information you're presenting is the presentation. The slides are just a visual aid. And so you always want to practice transitioning between slides. You always want to practice your spoken part, and you want to practice with technology. If you're not comfortable with Zoom, or you're not sure what the computer is going to be when you get there, you want to try to practice with the technology as much as possible, because you want to be able to focus on your speaking and not focus on working out why your slides aren't working the way you want them to work. Don'ts. Use distracting animation. I'm not gonna belabor this point anymore. Be weary of motion on slides. Don't overload slides with information. Many of us who have seen presentations in the past have seen walls of text, where you just got a slide with paragraphs of text, and the person is speaking, but you're not even paying attention to what they're speaking because you're just trying to read what their slide says. Sometimes they're just reading what their slide says. A totally useless way to use presentation software. What you should do if you're going to do that is you can read the presentation, put it in your speaker notes, you read that paragraph, put the bullet points of the most important things that you're saying on the slide, not the whole paragraph. That's where you, as the presenter, are doing the work. So I mentioned that the templates that Google Slides provides has a lot of fancy slides, a lot of various design features. I would say, unless you're a designer, try to avoid very fancy slides. I went on a slightly fancy side with this presentation because I wanted to try this template out. Usually my presentations are a lot simpler. I just don't like too many design features. I want people to focus on the information. And of course, I just mentioned, don't read from the slides. I'm reading the bullets from the slides, and I have a lot to say about each bullet point. Whereas what I see sometimes is people just reading the entire slide, and that's their presentation. That means a person didn't prepare their presentation, and you don't want to be that person. All right, those are my best practices. And now I think it's basically time for the Q&A, my favorite part of the presentation, to be honest with you. And we have a few questions, and I'm going to try to do my best to cover questions. So it's 12:10 now. I was going to end at 12:15. I'll stay a little bit longer so I can cover some of the questions as much as possible. All right, let's start. How do we ensure no one breaks into our Google Drive? My reticence to using Google Drive is that hackers might easily be able to hack into my docs. Well, they're not going to be able to hack into your docs with any more risk than they'd be able to hack into your Google account. So unless you're sharing your files with people, there's no way, if they don't know your password and your username, that they're going to be able to hack into your Google Drive. There have been bugs in Google Drive, but those bugs didn't affect most people. So I would say that your security risk is no more than the security risk you have by using a cloud-based email like Gmail. The Google Drive is tied to your Google email address. If yes, that means also storage space, including photos, emails with attachments, Google Docs, and slides. Correct. Yeah, when you use a Google account, I think you get 15 gigabytes, which is that's a lot of space. You get 15 gigabytes. So if you're going to be using a lot of videos, if you're going to be putting a lot of videos into your presentations that you're storing in Google Drive, that's going to take up a lot of space. Images, that's not something to, I mean, you can the thousands and thousands of images. So you wouldn't uh, be worried about running out of space. Somebody mentioned in the chat, if you share your presentation, someone can copy it. That is correct. If you share your presentation, somebody can copy it and save it into through their Google Drive. So you have to be aware of that. Although for most people, that isn't a big risk, because if you're presenting a presentation, the people are going to want your presentation anyway. But you can also save your presentation. And somebody mentioned that. What are the export options for a finished presentation? So you can keep it within Google Drive. You can also export it as a PDF. You can export it as a PowerPoint file. And the way to do that is, let me bring up this. Exit that. So the way to export files is File, Download, and you can export into any of these formats. Now, of course, if you export into PowerPoint, some of the transitions might not come through, but most of the time, some of the spacing might be a little weird. Most of the time, it'll translate fairly well. PDF will save your presentation exactly as is, and each page will be a slide. Plain text will remove all the images. JPEG is an image. These will just be image files, but that's only in each individual slide. Can you copy PowerPoint slides into Google Slides? You can. Again, some of the formatting and special features won't appear, but yeah, you can do File and Open, and you can open slides from your computer. So you can upload from your computer, and you can select Google. You can select PowerPoint files, and it'll import into Google Slides. Is Slides a good app to make event flyers? I need to learn to make flyers for nonprofit organization to hand out to the public. It's not a great uh, place to make flyers, but you can. So the downside here is that it's long ways. You can change the orientation of your slides to be 8.5 by 11, and you could make flyers using Google Slides. Um, I mean, if it works for you, then do that. Uh, I haven't done it before. I find other software is more appealing for that. But if it works for you to make flyers, then you don't need any of these other slides. You can just make one slide, change the orientation of your slide so you get a page setup. You could do custom 8.5 by 11. And now this slide is a page. And if I wanted to print it, I could hit print. I don't know if you guys will see the box. I don't know, what it does is exports to PDF. So it'll basically just export that as a PDF. I'm gonna undo that. But yeah, so you could use it to make flyers. It's possible. Do you have to give credit to the creator if you insert a video? It's best practice to give credit whenever you can and whenever you need to for using images and video. Somebody mentioned Canva, which is one of the competitors. Google Slides is a great place to make flyers. So Canva allows you to make presentations and also flyers. And Canva is also free. They do have a paid version, but if you go to canva.com, I recommend trying it. It is also free online. But yes, give credit to creators of images and video as much as possible. How do you insert media from your phone or computer? So you just upload. So if I go to insert, let's do insert image, upload from computer. And that's an option whether you insert video or audio. To Google Drive, you can upload something to Google Drive and you can insert, and you can then insert it in here, but you can upload from here. New, you can file upload, you can upload a video to Google Drive and then share it. You said you work online through Google, you can save your files there, but if I saved it on my computer, would I be able to access it later to look or edit without being signed into a Google account? And if I shared it with someone else through email to someone, could they see it without signing into Google? Okay, so there's a few things here. So you can't save Google Drive files on your computer. There's a way to sync from your computer to online, but that's a whole nother category of items to do. It's all saved on Google Server. It's all accessed within your browser. So you wouldn't be saving it onto your computer. You do need to be signed into your Google accounts to access your files to edit them. If you're not signed in, but you have a link, you would be able to view them. If you share with a file through email, so you wouldn't be attaching it. If you shared a link, so if I went to share and I sent a link to someone, they would be able to access, they should be able to access it even if they don't have a Google account. It'll just appear in their browser. But I don't think they need to be logged in. If they want to add comments and stuff, I think they may need to be logged in. Somebody mentioned templates are fun to work with. They are indeed. If you enjoy design and if you enjoy playing around with designs. On the template, you can keep or remove grid lines, correct? Yes. So here, these grid lines are not, this is just an image. So I can remove this background. But yeah, for the if you want to do if we're talking about the guides, um, yeah, you can remove the edit. You can do whatever you want with the guides, but they don't appear in the presentation anyway. Could you use any browser to access Google Slides, also Google Drive, or do you think it works better on Google Chrome? I think you can access it on any browser. They can make any modern browser will be able to access Drive and Slides. I don't think it's significantly better on Chrome. Somebody wanted me to repeat what I meant when I said respect information hierarchy. That means to respect the importance of information on slides. So here, for instance, I have the title, which is the title slide, which is bigger and bolder. Then I have bullet points, which are smaller. If I had other bullet points, so for instance, I said here, born 1987. This is information that is sort of underneath this one. So here it came up as the same size. The higher information hierarchy is the spacing, but really I would want to make this a little smaller. So it was clear that title, then this the next bit of information, then this the next bit of information. And this helps our eyes and also our minds assimilate the information in the way that we want to present it. If you start making the less important, like if I made this way bigger, it just looks weird. It doesn't make sense in terms of the way that we present information. Some presenters talk more than presenting slides. They tend to overtalk. Yes, that's that's a matter of opinion. I think I talk a lot. I have more talking than I do slides, and some people may think that I overtalk, and they wouldn't be wrong necessarily. Can you suggest where to you can practice various features? The best place to practice various features is right on Google Slides. Go to slides.google.com and practice all the features. There's no risk. You can just go and you can do it. You're not going to break anything. And I highly recommend that you do. And I think we're right at the end of our presentation here. An anonymous attendee said, "Thank you for your presentation. I liked your style and loved the tips." Thank you very much. I loved having you all as an audience. We're right here at the end of the presentation. Before I finish, I do want to very quickly send a post-event survey to you in the chat. It'll also appear when you exit the presentation. There you are. And once again, thank you all for being here with me this morning and into the afternoon for our in-depth tour of Google Slides. I hope the information was useful for you and that you're now equipped to go and practice and use Google Slides or any presentation software. If you have questions, again, feel free to email me by replying to the follow-up email. Please fill out the survey if you can. And thanks for being here, and I'll see you next time.